Remember, I spoke about the dispute of right and the dispute of interest. And I also alluded to the differences there too. And I also indicated the fact that, there are 3 dispute resolution processes that we use in South Africa. Now, these are the processes. The first one is the adjudicative process, which really is a needs-based process. The second one is the power process. And the third one is the coercive process. This is settlement by unilateral action. Now let's just go back to the adjudicative process. Here it's settlement by agreement of the parties. That is, parties that are in dispute, they would obviously come together and negotiate. There would be a mediation process. There would be conciliation. And sometimes there is a facilitation process as well, and a joint problem-solving process. The non-binding fact-finding or arbitration process, investigation, advisory arbitration. All those are needs-based. Adjudicative. Relationship by objective, RBO, or relationship by initiative. All those form part of the adjudicative process. 2 parties or more that are in dispute, they come together, negotiate, mediate, and of course, at the end of the day, an agreement is entered into. So the settlement there too is 50-50. It's win-win. It's win-win. Now let's then move on to the second one. Second one, as I said, is the power process. Now this is settlement by a third party. Third party. Now this is the use of an arbitration process. This is a binding arbitration process, as opposed to the non-binding arbitration process that we spoke about in the adjudicative process. But here, where we talk about settlement by the third party, this is a binding arbitration process. The use of courts, that's binding. The binding commission of inquiry, listen to that, binding, which means that the findings and the recommendations coming from that commission of inquiry would be binding. Binding, fact-finding mission. In a situation like this, in this power process, where there is a third-party intervention, it's win-lose. One party wins and the other one loses. Unlike the previous one that we were talking about, the needs-based, where all the parties win, win-win solution. Here, it's win-lose. The third one is the coercive process. Settlement by unilateral action. There you have it, strike. We go on strike. We do it, affirmative aerobics, And then the employer would obviously hit back by locking out. There you have it, protest action. Boycotts, unilateral implementation of changes. Management just comes up and imposes changes without consulting with the employees. That's the power that the employer has. But of course, I mean, it is problematic. It really is problematic. Yes, in some situations, maybe you could use that. Maybe you could use that. But it is always ideal in a situation like this, particularly when you talk about, the unilateral implementation of changes, that changes that affect the employees need to be, consulted. Pickets, that's power. Demonstrations, violence and intimidation, people get intimidated and people get killed sometimes. Occupation, simply because you hold a senior position, your direct reports become a problem to you. And then you use, the fact that you are superior or senior to them, and you victimize them in the process. I mean, you're using power, you're using occupation, because under normal circumstances, you wouldn't do that. So these are the three different dispute resolution processes, that we use in South Africa. The subsequent slides cover the following: the Labor Relations Amendment Act of 2014 and the Labor Relations Amendment Act of 2018, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act 2018, and the National Minimum Wage Act of 2018. Please read them at your leisure. I've now come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your patience and for listening through. I greatly appreciate it. I have tried, to provide you with an understanding of the nature and operation of the South African labor regulatory environment. In doing so, I've covered, the following topics: the policy imperatives and legislative framework, the Labor Relations Act, the process leading to the promulgation of the Act, the rationale behind South Africa coming up with this piece of legislation, the key changes that have come about. I also went on to talk about the employee rights, as well as the employer rights. Talked briefly about the overarching principles behind this legislative framework in this country. Spoke about the dispute resolution processes Now, those are the issues that I have indeed covered. The other issues that I'm requesting that you read at your leisure are the following: the Labor Relations Amendment Act of 2014 and 2018, the Basic Conditions of Employment Amendment Act of 2018, as well as the National Minimum Wage Act of 2018. Should you have any comments or questions that you would want to ask me, please feel free to do so. My contact details are as follows. My cell phone number 082 7716 742, and my email address is ruben.denge40@gmail.com. Thank you very much once more.